I am old even by Quelian standards. My consciousness has persisted through 14 body transfers, and my memory spans back to when the Confederacy was merely a loose alliance of 17 systems. Now we encompass over 8,000 worlds, or rather, we did until recently. It was I who first recognized the human problem. It was I who convinced the Council to act, and it is I who must now record our failure so that future generations might understand. Humans first appeared on our scanners as a curious anomaly, a single-planet species advancing through technological phases at a rate we had never witnessed before. Most species require millennia to progress from rudimentary tools to orbital capabilities. Humans did it in less than 10,000 years, a mere blink in cosmic time. I remember my first journey to Earth, disguised in their form. The year was 2042 by their calendar, and they had already begun preliminary mining operations on their moon. Their cities sprawled across continents, belching toxins into their atmosphere. They had split the atom a century prior and were now harnessing fusion energy. But it wasn't their technology that disturbed me. It was their nature. Humans never stopped. They never reached equilibrium. While all other sentient species eventually found balance with their environments, humans consumed with increasing voracity. They competed fiercely not just against other species but against each other. Their empires rose and fell in rapid succession, each more extensive than the last. Their population had reached unsustainable levels, yet they continued to expand. Most concerning of all, they didn't respect the principles. The 6 principles of sentient coexistence form the foundation of Confederate law, principles that every other spacefaring race had independently developed before contact. Humans were the exception. They killed their own kind without remorse. They exterminated other species on their planet without consideration. Their dominant cultures glorified conflict rather than harmony. I presented my findings to the Council. The debate lasted 17 cycles, but in the end, they saw the truth of my warnings. Humans were a cancer in the galaxy, one that needed to be contained before it metastasized. We made contact officially in 2057. We offered them membership in the Confederacy, provided they accept limits on their expansion and adhere to the principles. Their response was predictable: initial excitement followed by outrage at the conditions. They wanted our technology but not our wisdom. They wanted the stars without the responsibility. When diplomatic efforts failed, we demonstrated our power by shifting their planet's moon into a different orbit. We informed them that compliance was not optional. Their response? They launched nuclear weapons at our ships. The Council's patience ended that day. We gave them a choice: voluntary exile to the outer arm, where they could develop in isolation until they matured as a species, or extinction. Their unified world government, only recently formed in response to our arrival, chose exile. We were merciful. We provided them with the means to transport their entire population, all 11 billion, to 3 habitable but undeveloped worlds in the outer arm. We allowed them to take their technology and their genetic heritage. We even terraformed the planets to make them more Earth-like. Then we established the boundary, a vast defensive network that would prevent human expansion back into the galaxy proper. The year was 2073 when the last human transport crossed the boundary. Earth was left under quarantine, preserved as both a monument and a warning. I thought the matter resolved. We had contained the threat. We had preserved a unique species while protecting the greater galactic community. I was wrong. For 300 years, we heard nothing from beyond the boundary. Our monitoring stations detected their colonization of additional systems within their permitted zone, but it seemed they were adhering to the terms of their exile. The Council turned its attention to other matters, and the human question faded from our collective consciousness. Then came the silence. One by one, our monitoring stations along the boundary went dark. Not destroyed. There were no energy signatures indicating attacks, but simply silent. We dispatched investigative teams, but they failed to report back. I advocated for a major expedition. The Council, comfortable in centuries of peace, was slow to respond. By the time they authorized action, it was too late. The human fleet emerged from the boundary not as scattered refugees, but as a unified armada, stretching across parsecs. Their ships, if such a word is adequate, were unlike anything we had ever seen. Where Confederate vessels are elegant constructions of living crystal and quantum fields, human ships were massive, angular monstrosities of dark metal and churning energy. They didn't so much travel through space as tear it open and step through. Their first transmission arrived simultaneously at every Confederate world. "We remember." Just those two words, broadcast in the ancient English language that had somehow become the dominant tongue of their new empire. Then came the demands. Earth was to be returned to human control immediately. The Confederacy would acknowledge human sovereignty over the outer arm and 50 additional systems extending inward. There would be no negotiation. The Council, in its arrogance, rejected these terms and deployed our defense fleets. I still remember watching the battle unfold from the Central Observatory on Quelia, our ships the most advanced in known space, firing elegant streams of focused energy and gravity distortions. The human vessels absorbing these attacks without apparent damage, then responding with weapons that seemed to ignore the fundamental laws of physics. The battle lasted less than a day. 17 Confederate worlds were rendered uninhabitable. Our fleet, 1/3 of our total military strength, was obliterated. The Council sued for peace. The humans accepted, with additional terms. The Confederacy would be reorganized. Each member world would retain autonomy in internal affairs, but would acknowledge the human protectorate in matters of interstellar policy. And I, Grand Arbiter Wutash, would surrender myself to human justice as a war criminal. I did not resist when they came for me. My long life had taught me to recognize the inevitable. They brought me to Earth, not to execute me as I had expected, but to show me what we had done. The planet was no longer the blue-green jewel I remembered, but a monument to human determination. They had transformed the dead world we left behind into something new. Vast arcology towers reached into the clouds. The oceans, once polluted, now gleamed with carefully engineered ecosystems. The air was cleaner than it had been even before human industrialization. My human guide, a woman named Commodore Miles, led me through a museum dedicated to what they called the Exiled. I saw the suffering we had caused, the families torn apart, the countless deaths during the hasty evacuation. I saw recordings of the early colony worlds, where millions perished before infrastructure could be established. But I also saw what came after. How adversity had forged the disparate human nations into a single entity with a shared purpose. How exile had taught them patience and planning. How they had spent centuries preparing not just to return, but to ensure they could never be threatened again. "You thought you were teaching us a lesson," Commodore Miles told me as we stood before a massive viewport overlooking the rebuilt cityscape of what had once been called New York. "And you did, though not the one you intended. You taught us that in this galaxy power is the only language that matters. You taught us that diversity and independence, the qualities we valued most, were weaknesses to be overcome. And so you became like us," I replied, "a unified force imposing its will on others." She smiled then, a human expression I had learned to read centuries ago. This one contained no humor, only a cold satisfaction. "No, Arbiter Wutash, we became what we needed to become to survive. The question now is what the Confederacy will become under our protection. That was 50 years ago. I remain on Earth not as a prisoner, but as an advisor, or perhaps a trophy. I have watched as humans have restructured the Confederacy, introducing concepts alien to our traditions. Competitive markets, democratic processes, individual rights that sometimes supersede collective harmony. Some member worlds have embraced these changes, finding in human governance a dynamism long absent from Confederate society. Others resist subtly, maintaining our traditions beneath a veneer of compliance. The humans are aware of this resistance, but seem unconcerned. "Let them plot," I once overheard a human official remark. "It took us 300 years to overthrow their exile. If they can do better, perhaps they deserve to." This confidence is not unfounded. With each passing year, human influence grows. Their technologies advance while ours remain static. Their population expands while ours dwindles. Their culture spreads, enticing, vibrant, and dangerous, across worlds that once found humans repulsive. I am left to wonder if I truly understood what I saw in those early humans. Was it really chaos and destruction I witnessed, or was it vitality? Did we fear them because they threatened the galaxy, or because they threatened our complacent dominance of it? I have no answers, only observations. The humans we exiled have returned with an empire, yes, but it is not the empire of conquest I had feared. It is something more subtle and perhaps more transformative. An empire of influence, of ideas, of restless, relentless change. Perhaps in the end, this was inevitable. Perhaps the galaxy needed humanity's chaos to break the stagnant order we had maintained for millennia. Or perhaps I am simply an old being, trying to find meaning in defeat. I, Wutash, who lived long enough to see my greatest victory become my most catastrophic failure, leave this account in the hope that those who come after will understand. When we feared humanity's nature and sought to change it by force, we only succeeded in focusing it. We exiled the humans. They returned with an empire, and the galaxy will never be the same. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.